So there's a book written by Thom Rainer. He is a researcher. He's been president of Lifeway Publishing. He probably is one of the best known, I would just say, on-the-street researchers about faith and church life in America. And in his book, Unchurched Next Door, he gives us a little way to think about it. So he says, here are all the people that we encounter. So we have a lot of people in our lives that we encounter every single day. And he wants to say, how willing would they be to engage in a spiritual conversation? That's his question. How willing? So he says there, he calls them unbelief. So that's the U, unbelief 5. He said 5% of people are antagonistic. They're those active unbelievers. Don't talk to me about it. I've only really run into one person in all the people I've talked to who I put him, he's not even on the blue line. He was down here. It was in Portland, Oregon with Ron Clark, who was starting the Agape Church in downtown Portland. And we were out just talking with people on the street. And I went up to this guy and I said, hi, my name's Stan. We're with the new church here, talking with people about faith. He said, if you say another word, I'm going to hit you in the face. I said, well, not another word. He was antagonistic. But he's the only guy I've ever met who has threatened me with bodily harm. No one else has done that. But yet there are a lot of antagonistic people. Now what he did, we call it the spiritual vomit. You ever run into the spiritual vomit? They think, what's the worst thing I could say that would turn them off so that they will not bother me again? And so they find whatever that thing is in their life and they bring it up and they throw it out at you. We just call that the spiritual vomit. And we do have to be ready to get through that spiritual vomit. When I was teaching at Cascade College, I'd take students out on our MAX trains, like the BART system here. And we would go up to complete strangers and we'd say this. We're in students from Cascade College and we're in a modern religion class. So I've given them some place, Cascade College, gives it some legitimacy. Told them that we're going to talk about religion, right? Because we're in a modern day religion class. And then came the question. We're asking people, the people that you know, your coworkers, your friends, family people, what do they think of God? Now what's important with that, we didn't ask them what they thought of God. We asked them what the people they know. And that's really important sometimes as we engage people in spiritual conversations. They're going to be a little reluctant, or they think we're going to ask them about them, but when we ask them about people they know, it gives them some distance, a little bit of neutrality. Does that make sense? And that was really important. But these two young men, these students of mine, they went up to a couple of these guys and they said that, and they did the spiritual vomit. We're gay. That was the thing they felt like would most put off a Christian. And bless his heart, one of my students, he went over and he just put his hand on this fella's shoulder and he said, that's all right. We just want to have a conversation with you. And they, for 20 minutes, had a wonderful conversation about faith. Because our students were willing to go through the spiritual vomit to get to them. But that's the antagonism. But only 5% of people are in that antagonistic zone. Next zone is a larger one. These are resistant people. And they're just the people who say, I'm not interested. I don't want to talk about it. No. You know what? I find myself in that zone a lot whenever I have Jehovah's Witnesses knock on my door. I'm in that zone. You know, so I've got to understand people do live there because I just don't want to deal with what they're dealing with. And so I'll usually tell them, well, thank you for coming by. I am a believing Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ as Lord of my life. So 36% of people he found are neutral. Yeah, Okay, if you want to, that's okay. I'm just not going to engage too much. So that's that kind of neutrality zone. He said, you twos, those are receptive people. Or go, yeah, I've been thinking about that. Or, I have a question. Maybe you could answer a question for me. So they're wanting to engage. They're not seekers, but they're willing to engage. And then he has those, he calls them highly receptive. First time I really ran into people, I thought, these are highly receptive people. It was in my church growing up at the Lakeview Church of Christ in Tacoma, Washington. I was 16, and we had these two guys who were in a VW van, an old VW van, even at that time, and they were following the Rolling Stones concert, and they were selling t-shirts. And they had somewhere down here in California, someone had given them a little New Testament, and they had been reading it all the way up the coast, following the Stones. And they came into our church, and I met them, and they looked just exactly what you would have expected, kind of scrungy and hadn't had a bath in a while, and long hair, and their t-shirts had Mick Jagger's mouth open with the big tongue hanging out of it, And they came in, and they sat down, and so as soon as we were done, I went over and started talking with them, and they said, we've been reading the Bible, this Bible someone gave us, and we got to this book called Acts, and it started talking about people being baptized. So we've been to 3 churches asking if they would baptize us, and they wouldn't. Do you guys baptize? I said, yes, we do. And then I turned around to our preacher, I said, come here, please help me. I don't know what to do. Those were highly receptive people. I mean, God had been working in their life. And someone had given them a witness, right? They'd given them some scripture. And they were following. I have no idea what happened to them, other than that they were baptized that night. And they were just like some of those folks in Acts. They went on their way rejoicing. Went up to Seattle, selling t-shirts at the Stones concert. But now they had something different about them. But here's that amazing thing is this blue line, that everyone above the blue line is willing to have a reasonable conversation. So out of every 4 people we meet, 3 of them are going to be willing to have a conversation with us. These are the complete strangers on the street. These aren't the people that you already know their first name and their last name. These are just the complete strangers. I think that's pretty amazing. No, they actually sent research teams to all 50 states, and they interviewed, I don't remember how many, it was thousands of people that they interviewed in all 50 states. And that's a great question. And so it was a large group. He is a surveyor, so it was a random sample survey, but they went to all 50 states to do this. Yeah. So it was pretty, it is. But in my experience, I find it's actually a higher percentage. I find it's about 90% are willing to have a conversation with me about faith things. I just think that's remarkable. In fact, there's more people willing to have a conversation with me than I often am willing to have a conversation with them. Because it takes time and it takes energy. And there are just times I just think, I just don't want to have a conversation. So I'm just letting you know me. But I find for me it's 90% are willing to have that.